Welcome, everybody, to this session of Beers with Bill. It is my great pleasure to welcome back to the show Wilma Vondag from Wellington Brewery and Queen of Craft. Wilma, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm so excited and happy to be here, and thank you for having me back again.
Oh, you're always engaging, so I'm going to love every minute of this. We're going to start with the Arkell. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we're going to start with the Arkell Best Bitter. One of the reasons that I like to start with this beer is it's only 4% alcohol, but it's got plenty of flavor, very, very malt forward, but it's a really sessionable beer. And I think it really showcases the history of Wellington in a glass, really. I mean, this was, basically the first beer that Wellington brewed, in a kind of a production kind of manner, and true to the Best Bitter style. Really reflects the heritage of the brewery being a very, British-based style brewery with the British ales. And yeah, it's just a super awesome beer and really approachable, really drink, crushable almost. And like I said, it still has so much flavor. And I love just that nice biscuity malt that you get right away.
It has always been my favorite style of beer, that's for sure. The malt forward beers are the ones that I started with and still love today.
I had the distinct pleasure of working for a little while in a really historic pub in Hampstead outside of London, England, and got to pull a lot of, real ale pints, and that smell, you still get it out of the can. It's not quite the same, but it is reminiscent of just that old bar smell, with all those real ale and the malt smell that just is embedded in everything in the bar. So yeah, it's a little nostalgia for me.
I can well imagine that must have been quite the experience to do that.
It was amazing. It was pretty amazing to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to start out with my curiosity question, and there's two of them. The first one being, you got a degree in psychology.
Yes.
You did a diploma in media studies. You're working in an engineering service firm. You are a beer educator, a brewer. You are part of the Queen of Craft. And who knows what other things I would add to that list, because as you said in the email to me, the ones that I thought you had changed. I was like, okay, how do you manage your time?
It really is a balancing act. I'm not going to lie. I mean, a couple of years ago, I pretty much, truth be told, I am a bit of a workaholic. I get a lot of joy out of work. And I think that one of the things that has really kept me going over the years is kind of the diversity of the work that I do. So it's not same stacked on top of each other. I mean, there really are big differences. And a lot of the things that I participate in also have a seasonal quality. So there's, busier times and the less busy times, and they seem to ebb and flow at different rates. So you can kind of weave things together quite nicely. And I don't really sit down a lot. I'm not good at it. I've never been good at sitting still. So I like to fill my time. I like to keep my mind and my body busy. So it's just kind of always been the way I've been. Little bit of a Dutch side to things. I mean, I'm Dutch through and through. Both my parents were born in Holland, and I don't know if any of you have heard of the Dutch work ethic, but I think that was really drilled into me at a very young age, and you can't really shake that sort of thing. So
I understand. Mindfulness is obviously not a practice that you are going to undertake at this stage of your life.
Don't understand it at all.
What's the pathway that brought you to being a beer educator and a brewer?
So that's an interesting path. I've developed a kind of an interest and love of beer, as a late teen. I will admit I drank some really, really lousy beer when I started drinking beer. However, I really did discover good beer pretty early on, thank goodness, and started dabbling in a bit of home brewing at the time, made some awful awful beverages. I'm not going to pretend that anything would have ever, I would ever be proud of at this point in my life, but kind of sparked more of a curiosity. And I, mentioned that I did travel and spend some time in pubs in England, which really opened my eyes to that whole idea of beer culture, because we're going back to the mid 90s now, and the beer culture in England was so different. I mean, we had pubs, but the actual culture and how people responded to the idea of the social settings of pubs and the framework around beer was very, very different. And I think I took that back with me when I came back here and really started wanting to know more about beer and flavors in beer and that whole experience, which over the course of the years, one of the first craft beers I think that I really latched onto in this area was Wellington's SPA. And that kind of brought Wellington always to the fore. And they have such a great presence in the Guelph area and around that, it was always just there. And they were doing some fun things, again, back in the late 2000s. And when the craft beer explosion was starting to happen. And then fast forward to Karen, our fearless leader at Queen of Craft, starting the whole Queen of Craft. And at the time, I had done some traveling in the States to breweries, but really it and it still is dominated by men, but 10 years ago, it was really few and far between the pathways for women to, really see themselves in the craft beer world. And when Karen opened that door with Queen of Craft, I mean, I was so ready to jump in. And I think that's really what kind of lit the fire to get involved in the beer, the craft beer world here in this neck of the woods.
So were you brewing at the level of craft brewing at that time, or did Queen of Craft get you there?
So like I said, I dabbled a little bit, and I had a few friends that were home brewing and things like that, and went to a lot of breweries as much as I could to try to, figure things out and find out the way in. And then this door opened with Queen of Craft, and Wellington just kind of welcomed me with open arms and let me kind of follow my dreams in a weird way. I mean, I never would have guessed that this would have happened when I started with Queen of Craft in Wellington, but here we are. And it's been, I feel very blessed by the journey that I've had.
I hear you on that. Queen of Craft. We're into the Queen of Craft 9 now, are we not?
Yes. Oh, it's incredible. Yeah.
You want to give us a little bit of background on that?
Absolutely. So Karen started Queen of Craft with Wellington's blessing. They basically gave her carte blanche and said, find something, find your passion, find a path, create a program. And she came up with Queen of Craft. And the whole idea behind it is beer education by women for women. It was laid out to let women of, every, whether you're new to beer or, like myself, trying to find your pathway in beer, or, perhaps you already were working in the industry some way, to share their experiences, to learn more, and to create community for women in the craft beer world. And so it started, like you just mentioned, we're on our 9th iteration now, and it's been gaining steam every year. COVID kind of interrupted some of our plans, as everything else, but we haven't lost the passion or the fire or the support of Wellington and the community, particularly in Guelph. So we've had so much fun, and we've done so much learning and educating, and I feel like it really has been a great community builder in a lot of ways.
It certainly has. And you guys have managed to raise almost $50,000 for women in crisis in Guelph.
So that is a big part of our mandate. Is we are a nonprofit, and all the money that we get from our sessions and all of our education and everything else that we do. And, you know, whether it's a cask beer event, anything that's a ticketed, we donate all of the profits to Wellington Women in Crisis.
Yep. And you guys have your big event coming up in April, I believe, is it not?
That's correct. So normally, every year previous to this, we've always done our events every Friday in the month of March. However, you know, we would start our planning at the end of December, beginning of January, and that's of course when the Omicron variant hit, and we had no idea what to expect. And we really, really wanted to do in-person events this year, as opposed to last year when we had to do everything virtual. And so we decided that the best course of action was to push things. Now we're doing the last 2 Saturdays in April and the first 2 Saturdays in May. And that, you know, we figured would give us enough room to get past the Omicron wave and hopefully come out the other side where we can actually see people face to face.
Of course, we want to see people face to face.
100%. It is such a different, I mean, the events, you know, just getting that feedback when you're in the same room with people, you can't replace that.
Well, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So the path to beer educator comes through Queen of Craft?
Yes. Yeah, so there's a part of me that probably should have gone into teaching because, as my friends say, I like the sound of my own voice. That's not true. I don't actually like the sound of my own voice, but turns out I do like talking sometimes. And my dad was a history teacher. And so I grew up with a love of history. And with Queen of Craft, one of the big things and what I've really kind of grabbed onto is the history of women in brewing. And I feel really passionate about that. And there's, you know, the more I talk about it, the more I realize I have so much more to learn and to share and to explore. And so, you know, we really do try to get nerdy. We don't just, you know, when we're at our events, some of them are very fun, but we do want to have some sort of an educational component to it. So people walk away, you know, just feeling more knowledgeable and learning and growing and discovering their passions. So I feel very strongly about that education piece, and that translated really nicely into Wellington also wanting to grow a lot of, say, educating, you know, our actual consumers and educating people who may be serving the beer or who are looking to maybe bring their experience into their bar or their pub or their events. And so prior to COVID already, Wellington was expanding that notion of beer education. And Marvin Dick, who was our brewmaster at the time, also, you know, really keen on education. And he and I started teaming up. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since.
Miss Marvin, eh?
Do miss Marvin, yes.
I know. That was a bit of a shock. I had no idea that he was on the show. And then 2 weeks later, I'm reading when I'm on vacation. I'm like, whoa.
Oh yeah, he and I did an education session together. It was virtual. He turned off the computer and he said, I have something to tell you. And I'm like, oh no, because nobody ever wants to have something he told to them because you know it's not going to be good.
Yeah. So what's the second beer that we're going to taste tonight?
All right. So we are going to, especially because we just talked about Queen of Craft, we are going to talk about our Queen of Craft IPA. We're going to drink this and I'm going to really enjoy this. Little fun fact, I love IPAs. IPAs, hands down, my favorite style of beer. But Queen of Craft, in all of our years, we had never brewed just a straight up IPA. And so I knew I had my chance now to kind of make that happen. I do like the New England style. West Coast IPAs definitely have their place, but I do prefer the hazy, juicier, little bit of a bitter backbone to them, but still I like that big hot punch that you get on the East Coast. So yeah, we went with the hazy IPA, and I got to tell you, I love the end result. I'm so proud of this beer. And Bill, I'm very sad you're not enjoying it with me right now.
Yes, I apologize for that. I will be getting up to Wellington sometime in the next week to get it.
Excellent.
It's part and parcel to living in Woodstock and not always getting out that direction.
I completely understand that.
I could go, Marvin used to send beer to me, okay, but
see, that's kind of knowledge I should have had ahead of time.
Oh, no, that he missed a couple times too. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You and Erin have been busy. Erin Bradfoot from Little Beast.
Yeah, so she picked up, I don't want to say where Rat Magnet left off, but really she started carrying the torch in Canada to shed a light on some of the systemic problems with, unfortunately, sexual violence, sexual abuse, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, just lots of systemic problems that I feel like really needed a light shed on them. And Erin has, much to her own personal detriment, because, she's now receiving threats and things like that. But she opened the door and shed a light on stories for anybody that wanted to share their own personal experiences. And Karen and I started talking when she started doing this, and we said, well, I mean, if Queen of Craft doesn't say something and do something, what are we even, about? That we're, part of our mission statement is to create safe spaces for women, and we, completely work in the craft beer world with Queen of Craft. And so we reached out to Erin, and we reached out to our friends at Wellington Women in Crisis. And we've partnered with another organization in Waterloo. And we are right now currently planning a series of events under the title of Breweries Breaking Barriers. And we are going to be doing 4 virtual sessions, each focusing on different topics that are really, really relevant to what has come to light because of what Erin, has done and the stories that she has published. So we're going to be talking about, what can management do? We're going to be talking about things about male allyship. We're going to be talking about bystanders, so we are starting those, I believe, in April as well. And those are going to be held on Thursday night. So I can't say I'm excited, because it's kind of heartbreaking that we need to, even talk about this, but we need to talk about this. We can't continue to push things under the rug anymore. There's been like this giant spotlight shown, and I feel like there's enough force behind it that, we can get good traction, and people are talking, and people want to know how to make change and how to, do better. You know what I mean? And not just say the words, but actually have something concrete to grab onto. And again, it comes down to education and being able to talk and use your voice. So pretty excited that, we've been given this opportunity to do this work as well.
Well, what can I say? There are some very powerful and fierce women in the industry, and they're finding their voice.
That they are, and it's about damn time that, that they feel like they can use their voices. And I'm so happy to, to be surrounded by that as well.
Yeah. And I can't think of a more gifted individual than Erin to spearhead that. And I am sorry to hear that she's having death threats leveled against her.
Yeah, it's awful,
yeah.
From sharing stories, and suddenly you are getting hate thrown at you from the strangest places. I don't even understand it, but you know, she's a strong woman, and we owe her a big debt.
Yep, she's very strong, and I've had the pleasure of having her on the show twice. So, and looking forward to the next time that her and I have a chance to talk. So, you've indicated that you really like the East Coast style IPAs. That's the beer you like to brew. So that brings to mind two questions for me. The first one, what was it like walking in the door of Wellington to actually brew the first time?
I felt like a kid in a candy store. So this was back before Wellington had the new shiny equipment, and you know, we're, you know, just crammed in these.
Oh my gosh, you brewed on the old system.
Brewed on the old system. Oh yeah. Very first time. And it was amazing. I mean, you know, a lot of people that used to work at Wellington and are now working elsewhere, but you know, those were the people, you know, Jeremy and Dave and Kevin and Marvin, and just great people. You know, we still have great relationships, and supportive and kind and patient and all of the good things and everything you could want when you're, you know, doing something for the first time somewhere. And I'll bring up more of that when we get to our next beer. But yeah, it was kid in a candy store, and I couldn't wait to touch everything. And, you know, I wish, you know, beer could be made in a couple, you know, a full day instead of having to wait weeks for it to sit in a fermenter, because I just wanted to touch it, you know, the entire way along its path. That's how it felt.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So then that also leads to the question that I always like to ask somewhere in the show. Will you share with us your funniest beer story, which would be an oops or something really hilarious that's happened?
You want me to do that right now?
I don't know. It's up to you. We can save it for later.
Well, it's going to another Queen of Craft beer, because last year, because we weren't able to do our events properly and et cetera, we didn't have a brew team with Queen of Craft. So again, that's how I kind of, you know, opened the door for myself in brewing at Wellington, was through the brew team. But we didn't have a brew team. So I said, hey, you know, are you okay if I make a beer? We'll, you know, bring everybody in and we'll have fun and we'll brew this beer that I came up with. And so I wanted to do a taco-inspired IPA. And we teamed up with Taco Farm in Waterloo and got 11 kilos of nacho chips. And we smashed the heck out of them and infused them in the mash, not really thinking about the order of it. So in hindsight, what I should have done was put the grains in and then put the nachos on top. But we were just all, you know, everybody's excited and you want pictures, and we'd smashed up all these nachos. So we just started dumping them in while the rest of the grains were going in the mash tun. Well, wet smashed up nacho chips basically just turn into this solid paste. And our mash was stuck for over 5 hours. It took us over 5 hours to get the wort into the kettle. It was a disaster. Robin, who's our afternoon brewer, who's here right now, I mean, she and I just sat there and we tried every trick in the book to get it to not be stuck, but it was, I mean, the beer turned out, thank goodness, but that day was a disaster. Like, that, hands down, was the dumbest thing. I can't believe I did that.
I am idly curious how you managed to finally get it unstuck, or was it just patience?
It was patience, and we kept putting pressure in the tank, the vessel from the bottom to try to eventually create enough. But 5 hours, 5 hours.
See, Derek, you didn't miss anything by only pushing the button when you made beer with me, okay? I think all of us who have made beer, except for Kat at Shortfinger, who tells me she has never made a mistake.
Kat never makes any mistakes ever. Yes. We can all vouch for that.
I loved Kat dearly. When I asked her that question, what do you mean? I never make mistakes. And it's like, exactly. Okay. But the rest of us all have a story of that. Although my favorite was when the group came in for kickoff to do the birthday beer with me. We decided to do blood orange, and we're sitting there and we're zesting blood orange and then juicing them. And somebody turns to Dave, because he was still there at the time, turns to Dave and he goes, so how would you guys do this? And without missing a beat, he goes, we'd never do this. It's too much work.
And that is a very true story, because most breweries, they only do these crazy things on collabs, because collab brews are the crazy ones.
That's right. Because on a regular run, that is way too much work.
It is way too much work.
What has been your favorite beer to brew?
I'm going to say my favorite beer to brew was actually the first one that I ever brewed. And so this is the third beer on our list, just in case anybody wants to jump ahead. But
well, you know, we're close enough to the 15-minute mark. If you want to talk about that, let's talk about it.
So this is the Spice Odyssey. This was the very first Queen of Craft beer. And we brewed this with our Queen of Craft team. And it was just such a crapshoot, because, you know, Wellington hadn't really done that sort of thing before. You know, that kind of a collab. And there was a lot of, you know, weird ideas, and nobody knew if it was going to work. And I remember sitting in the brew house, and we would boil water, and we had all our little spices, and we made tinctures and teas of all different proportions. And we sat there and we, you know, got everything sorted out, you know, with the cinnamon and the ginger and everything else, and made this beautiful, beautiful bag. It ended up being a giant tea bag of all these spices, and the beer turned out beautifully. And I remember approaching Brad, our marketing guy here at Wellington, and I said, you know, would you consider this a success? Like, is this something that is sustainable? Can we do this? You know, can Queen of Craft, you know, are we able to do something like this again? And he said, absolutely. It was a great success. And I remember that feeling of knowing that, you know, we had done it. We had made this thing. So fast forward a little bit, and Wellington wanted to brew it again. It was successful enough. So they approached Karen and myself and said, hey, where's your recipe? We want to brew this again. And of course, nobody could find the recipe. So Karen and I had to start from scratch again and refigure it all out. And we brewed it on a much bigger scale. It got full LCBO release at that time. So now we're going back to, like, you know, 2014, 2015. And then behind our backs, Wellington put it in a category for the Canadian Brewing Awards, and it won gold. So I figure I'm probably never going to have a better experience than that, because that was like my first official Wellington beer, and we won gold medal at the Canadian Brewing Awards. So, you know, it's all downhill from here. But I love the brewing of that beer. I really did. I wanted to touch everything, and Wellington let me touch everything. So brewed it, bottled it, because that was back again in the old brew house. We had the 2-head bottler because we put it in 750s, and I stood there for hours. And I was so happy to do it, and changing because we were running it out of kegs. So you had to change the kegs to go back to the bottle filler, and you dunk the bottles in the water because they get all dirty. And I mean, it was just, and you have to cap them by hand, everything, little handmade tags we put on the bottles, honestly, like touched every single thing. And I mean, it was just one of the greatest experiences. And I remember what that felt like. And I think that energy has carried me forward all these years as well, just knowing how that felt and knowing the end result. And now, Wellington brews this beer annually. It's become a staple at Wellington Brewery. And I'm like, it floors me sometimes when I walk in here and I'm like, I know that beer, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's a great experience.
You can just tell by the animation and the energy in your talk about it. That's fantastic. And oh my gosh, you guys took on a bigger challenge than even I would have taken on a collab to put those spices together and get it right.
Well, then we had the second time, like Karen and I are like, you've got to be kidding me. Nobody wrote this down or saved it, like rookies, of course,
Well, that is a rookie
doesn't
mistake.
Let us get away with that anymore. It's all written down now.
I got to say, it is a rookie mistake not to write it down. If I hadn't done my first brew with Rob at Short Finger, who was adamant you write everything down, I probably wouldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite. I think that's when you realize that baking idea for brewing, that it is way more like baking, because cooking, you're like, yeah, you throw a little this, a little dash of that. Those aren't measurements. But when you're brewing something, I mean, you got to know how much of something you put in there, because if you ever want to recreate it, you need that step-by-step again. Time is important. Temperature is important. All of those things come into play. You can't just wing it from batch to batch.
That's right. When do you put wet hops in? How long? How long do you put it in for the boil? Every one of those things is important to
every single step is important.
Yep. And even when does Derek push the button on the system, right, Derek? What's next for Wilma?
So right now I am, along with the rest of our Queen of Craft team, we are knee deep in the planning stages, because we've got a month now to pull together our events. And as well, working with Erin and Women in Crisis to put together the other events. Beyond that, we've talked a lot about expanding Queen of Craft and what that looks like, and we've put surveys out. So I think we need to take a hard look at what that looks like. And, we have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of interest. It also requires a lot of work and time commitments and things like that. And, we have a great team, but it's all volunteer. So it can be challenging to plan and to try to, keep momentum going. Hopefully with in-person events, that can happen. But I've found with doing things virtually, it feels like momentum, but it's not. Everything just kind of stops. You know what I mean? Whereas I think when you get that energy of being with people, it's a lot easier then to build on and to keep things going and make commitments and keep those commitments. It's really easy to not read an email. It's really hard to see somebody that you made a commitment to in the same room as you and, try to duck out of the way. So.
Next time we're together, I'll show you the trick for that one, okay?
Is it carrying a big pitcher of beer and just keep walking, or?
No, I just as a quick aside, I was touring a military facility down in Nova Scotia because they had it open for the public. And one of the things that they were doing was taking pictures of everybody that was in the facility. And the person trying to get my picture tried 6 times because every time they went to take it, I moved away. And then realized that I better just stand there and let them take my picture or I'm going to get kicked out of here. So I'll show you how that's done.
I'll look forward to that lesson.
What book would I find on your night table right now?
So I have a deep love now for Emily St. John Mandel, the Canadian author. And so she wrote the book Station 11 and then The Glass Hotel. Station 11 is probably one of my all-time favorite books now. So for Christmas, I got one of her earlier books and it's called Last Night in Montreal. And I just finished it and it is spectacular. So I do like fiction. I read for escapism. I don't, when I read for knowledge, I treat that as a very different thing from my books on my nightstand. Those are for pleasure and escape. And I like books about, I like small stories a lot of the time. You know, nothing spectacular has to happen. It doesn't have to be, you know, world building kind of things. I like people and just human experience. So, yeah.
Who's your role model?
Pardon me?
Who's your role model?
I've been struggling with this because that was one of the questions that you had presented to me. I feel...
You don't have to have one person, by the way.
Yeah, it's tough because as you get older and the longer you live and the more experiences we go through, I feel like a lot of people really do end up disappointing you. Unfortunately, you know, you learn something about somebody, you're like, wow, I really looked up to that person, and it turns out they did that. So I really tried hard to keep my you know, hero thinking at bay, but it's, you know, role models, I'm not gonna lie, I do struggle with it. Just for a lot of those kind of reasons. I respect so many people, and I feel like I don't want to put the weight of that expectation on them personally or even mentally, because they don't need that from me to, you know, to be that to me. And I also don't want to do that to myself, just in case there's that little thing you're like, oh, darn it, what just happened there? You know what I mean? So I am unfortunately going to duck that question.
No, you're not. You've answered it.
Yeah, it's kind of a work in progress all the time.
Wilma, you've answered it. That's perfectly okay. Who do you think is sort of a new up and coming brewer in the region?
We had the very distinct pleasure of, I was allowed to represent Wellington at the Canadian, Brewers Journal Canada Awards, and we won Brewery of the Year. And Flux, out of Scotland, Ontario, they won the New Brewer of the Year. And Kelsey, who I had the pleasure of meeting at a Queen of Craft event a couple of years ago while she was still in school at the Brewers College. She came to a Queen of Craft event, and then we ran into each other again at the awards. And it was just so lovely to see her. And, you know, it's just so exciting to see a young woman so enthusiastic and, you know, really honing her craft and everything else. So I'm, you know, really excited for her and Flux to see what the future holds for them and her.
Please give me a soft intro to her. I would love to have her on the show.
Absolutely. I will try to do that for sure.
Yes. Yes. I would, I've heard so much about Kelsey and from so many different people.
Yeah, she's a lovely human being. Yep. So.
Yeah, and she's done a great job at Flux. They have sort of taken it to a new level for being an entry new brewery.
Exactly. That's exactly it. She came out guns a-blazing, basically, you know?
Well, isn't that what you want to do as a new brewer?
I think so. Like, go strong. Don't be timid, don't be shy. Brewing is not a place for that. You know, you really, even if you have some doubts, you know, just put your heart and soul into it. And I mean, she's proof that good things will happen.
Yep. You know, I met Sam right after he graduated out of beer college at Sada City.
Yep.
And he just blew me away. You know, and I feel Kelsey's doing the same thing. She's taken her craft and she's walked it one level up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? It's really nice to see that level of confidence as well. Like, she just handles herself and carries herself so well. It's really great to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's your favorite craft beer bar or restaurant in the region?
I have such a soft, sweet spot for Jane Bond in Uptown Waterloo.
You've got everybody here going up.
I mean, they've been around forever, and they've always been so supportive of the local scene. Yeah. And their tap list is still outstanding all the time. I don't know how they do it. I mean, it's not like they have the most taps of anybody or anything like that, but man, I love the vibe, and I've always loved the people. Yep. And it just feels really good going there every single time. And I've had so many fun nights there. I'm not gonna lie, so many fun nights.
Absolutely.
So Jane Bond is yeah, my heart is there.
Yeah. Let's talk about the hop water.
Yes, let's talk about hop water. So it's funny to end the night on a water, but I'm gonna crack this little can open. This project got started by Marvin before he left the brewery, and I think we're all better because of it. But I'm not just a soda water drinker. That has never appealed to me in any way, shape, or form. Like, if I'm gonna drink water, it's gonna be flat. I don't want the bubbles. But the hop water is just next level. I love IPAs, therefore I love hops.
Yeah.
And I think this is such a unique way of highlighting just the hops, because when you add, malt and other ingredients, it's going to affect everything about the beer. We talk about lagers. You can't hide anything in a lager or pilsner, but I mean, you can't hide anything in this. So all you're getting is those hops. And I mean, so our latest iteration is the Vista, which is a brand new hop. It was released in 2021. And it's part of a public program that in the United States, where they actually are producing, certain strains of hops for the public. They're not proprietary blends, or, nobody else gets their hands on it. This Vista hop is being made public, and Hey Ho Hops down in Aylmer was actually able to get the hop for us, and they're starting to grow Vista hops. So really new hop to the market. And this was, a great way for us to showcase this new hop. And I just love so much about the hop waters. You get the refreshing, you get the hop flavor. It is zero alcohol, zero, pretty much everything else, but it's still got hops in it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, you're getting a lot of thumbs up from everybody that's joined us tonight.
So somebody just asked what sort of beer you would put the Vista in. The Vista is a good helper hop. I don't think it has quite the character as a standalone, but it would be a great helper hop, if particularly in more like a hazy New England style IPA, kind of tropical fruit notes, some melon, stone fruit. I get a lot of pear on the nose. So depending on, you know, the flavor profiles, but I feel like it's a good partner hop, maybe not so much of a standalone hop. So yeah, definitely IPAs, or have fun and maybe try it in like a Pilsner or something, you know, more of an American style Pilsner, and see what results you get.
That would be interesting. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because that, I like that back end finish of a pear. That would be quite intriguing in a Pilsner.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm just checking my list so I can find one more to get you stuck on, okay? What's a typical day for Wilma look like?
I think that's one of the reasons why I also have been able to carry on a crazy schedule for as long as I have, is there really isn't a typical day. So a lot of the stuff I do is outdoors, very weather dependent. I am outdoors all year round, in the hottest and the coldest and the wettest and the driest and all of the in-betweens. But I'm really fortunate that I also get to make my own schedule most of the time. So there is no typical day. I mean, there are times when Karen apologizes to me for calling me, you know, 8 times a day. So I could be fielding a lot of calls. I could be having Zoom meetings. I could be out inspecting buildings. I spend a lot of time with my dogs. I also have 2 dogs that I'm quite devoted to, and I feel like being outside in the woods sometimes is part of my sanity. So I make that a priority as well. So yeah, no real typical day, but there's a lot going on in every single one of them all the time.
What's been the best advice you've ever been given?
I didn't take it at the time. But I was told to believe in myself and to, you know, understand what I have to contribute. And I think when I was given that advice, I was probably a little bit too young or not in the right place to really understand what that meant. There is a beauty in getting a little bit older, and self-assurance is one of those things, and you find your voice. And yeah, I think that is really, really good advice, to believe in yourself, because once you start believing in yourself, you understand how much, you know, is open to you and what you might be capable of doing.
Who's been the best influence for you?
The best influence. The best influence.
Or the most influential?
Well, I would have to say probably the most influential would be my dad, but I wouldn't say that that would be the best influence. My dad kind of looms large in so many aspects of my life, but I think that's like trying to live up to somebody's expectations of you that maybe aren't that realistic, and yet you have a really hard time letting go of. Feel like probably a lot of people have that with their parents. But the best influence. I would probably say my grade 13 English teacher. I have no idea why, but man, that woman has stuck with me my whole life. I think it was just her belief in the kids that she was teaching and her ability to create a love of certain things. And I mean, that's a pretty influential time when you're a late teen and somebody believes in you and wants the best for you and instills a certain love of things, and you can carry that forward your whole life.
That's true. That's true. Afterwards, I'll share my story of my grade 13 English teacher.
Okay.
I loved her dearly. She was fantastic.
She made me like Thomas Hardy. I mean, who does that?
Wow. Okay. Now I am really impressed. If you could spend a day brewing beer or talking beer with somebody, who would it be?
Who would it be? Oh gosh. See, that's a complicated one because so many of my like good beer buds are no longer at Wellington, and I just want them to all come back and we can hang out together. But honestly, so this was another little gift that happened at the Brewers Journals Awards. Was I got to meet Mary Beth from Granite, and she won Brewer of the Year. I would love to hang out with her and talk beer and know her story and brew something with her. I mean, I feel like she's one of those people that you don't know she exists until you know she exists, and suddenly you're like, how did I not know about you and everything that you've done? And yeah, I would love the chance to hang out with her and do stuff.
That would be quite the experience, I am sure. So, what is the one thing you would like all of us to take away from this conversation tonight?
I think I would like people to take away that, no matter what you find interesting, it's not weird, beer or otherwise. If you really find a passion for something, it's never too late. It's never too late to just kind of be like, I would like to know more about that. I wonder how I get into that. And then you find people that kind of think the same way that you do, and you start building community. I mean, I really am sometimes happily overwhelmed by what we've been able to create with Queen of Craft, from people meeting like-minded people and sharing a passion and a vision. And it's really, really lovely. And it has carried me through, some really boring days, some really down days, and kind of lit a fire and made so many good things happen, just for me personally, but for the, hopefully for a lot of other people in the community. And, you hear about people going back to school at 70 years old or whatever. Like there are people and there are things. And if you're interested, just kind of start trying to figure it out and find it for yourself, because it's worth it. It is so worth it.
Wilma, thank you for taking time in your busy schedule to share your stories and thoughts with us.
I love doing this, Bill. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. And please keep me informed so I can make sure everyone gets to hear what's coming up with everything going on with you and Aaron and Karen, and
for sure
stuff with Queen of Craft. So
yeah, I'll fill you in as we've got everything kind of organized, and I will definitely keep you in the loop.
And next week, people, Scott from Waymaker is joining us. I will be getting the beer list out to you. I now have it. And in a couple of weeks, Tej is going to join us from Merit. They are doing delivery a week and a half from now. So I'll be getting the list out to you so you can get your beer order in so that you can catch the free delivery to KW.